Okay, so today, welcome everybody. I'm going to explore with you the concept of rewilding leadership. It's, there we go. What we're going to go to look at is from mechanical control, and that's in a sense my dystopian view of what comes from mechanical control to a living systems leadership. And that's perhaps a nicer image of what that could possibly be like. So I'm going to do this by outlining 8 branches of wisdom for the workplace. My name's Thom Dennis, and I'll be your guide today, but more of that in a moment. So imagine if I told you that the secret to extraordinary leadership isn't found in the latest business strategy book, but in a 3,500-acre estate in West Sussex, where they stopped trying to control nature and achieved results that exceeded all expectations.
When we inherited the estate, the first thing your father said was, "You'll never make a go of farming on that land. It doesn't work. It's a virtual biological desert."
There wasn't much option other than a completely different direction.
We were going to tear down the fences, rip it all up, and put all our trust in nature.
It was a hugely radical way of thinking. It's never been done before.
Could this motley collection of animals transform the land that has been depleted? Hello. The outrage it caused amongst locals, the clock was ticking. We needed to see that something really was going to happen. Suddenly, it began to feel totally different.
Everything started to turn.
The earth coming to life.
It was just extraordinary.
The whole landscape was breathing a sigh of relief. You could hear it. Isn't that amazing? It's the stuff of fairy tales. As soon as the conditions are right, these species will find you somehow. So then miracles start to happen.
At Knepp Estate, when they abandoned intensive farming and let natural processes take over, something remarkable happened. Species returned that hadn't been seen for decades. The land became more productive, and they created a sustainable, profitable enterprise. Today, I'm going to show you how some of the same principles that transformed Knepp can revolutionize your leadership and organization. So, I'm Thom Dennis, and I've spent decades working with leaders across military, corporate, and healing contexts. From my time in the Royal Marines to consulting with Fortune 500 companies, I've seen what works and what spectacularly doesn't. This framework comes from real experience with real results. In the next 35 minutes, I'll share 8 fundamental shifts that can transform your leadership from mechanical control to living systems thinking. You'll discover why your current approaches might be working against you and how small changes can create extraordinary results. So let's go into it. The first, let go of control. Most leaders are addicted to control. We inherited this from industrial age thinking, the belief that organizations are machines to be operated rather than living systems to be nurtured. I once worked with a tech CEO who insisted on approving every decision, no matter how small. While competitors were innovating, his company was paralyzed. his need for control was actually creating chaos. Now, research shows that command and control leadership reduces innovation by up to 60% and increases employee turnover by anything up to 40%. True leadership is like a river carving its path. It flows around obstacles rather than trying to demolish them. When you create clear boundaries but give people autonomy within them, magic happens. At the higher group, for instance, they transformed from a struggling manufacturer into the world's largest appliance company by replacing rigid hierarchy with around 4,000 autonomous micro-enterprises. Each unit makes its own decisions while serving the whole. Just like this murmuration of starlings. This isn't about abandoning structure. It's about creating what I call enabling constraints. Just enough framework to provide direction while maximizing freedom. I'm going to be plowing through this. I know from time to time, Renato, you've got thoughts and perhaps Daphne as well. So don't feel like I'm just sort of on a roll here. But if you want to put in ideas, thoughts, or whatever, then please feel free.
Thank you, Tom. I take that invitation apart from Echo and just say you only appreciate that naturally I'm doing all the right things because I'm working, believe it or not, with the Japanese Shumei natural agriculture entity. And they do exactly the same thing with their farming land in England. Everything is natural, no artificial fertilizers, working with the planet, working with the atmosphere, and being so successful.
Well, it's good to hear that. And, you know, I think it would be good to learn a little bit more about that. You do have a knack of getting involved in some really interesting businesses, Renato.
Thank you.
Anyway, on we go. The second branch is about embracing complexity. We've been trained to see organizations as machines, predictable, controllable, fixable with the right intervention. And this mechanistic thinking leads to oversimplified solutions for complex challenges. Nokia, despite having brilliant engineers and market intelligence, couldn't adapt to the smartphone revolution. Why? Because they kept applying linear thinking to a non-linear world. When we treat complex systems like simple machines, we create unintended consequences. Our solutions make problems worse. Indeed, I would say, in my experience of working with organizations, they're very quick to try and find what the problem is and then to solve it, but they very rarely put the resource into finding out the root of the problem, which is almost never the presenting problem. But nature thrives on complexity. A forest isn't controlled by a CEO tree. It's an ecosystem where each element contributes to the whole. Leadership in complex systems requires ecological intelligence. Google's Project Aristotle discovered that psychological safety, not individual talent, was the biggest predictor of team performance. They stopped trying to engineer perfect teams and started creating conditions where teams could evolve naturally. Complexity isn't your enemy. It's your competitive advantage when you learn to work with it rather than against it.
Well, Tom, you know, something. Sorry, I've got an echo now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people fear complexity. You know, they just get so tangled up in the thought of how complex it is, and they try and simplify it down to one problem that we stick a band-aid on or solve it. Because somehow or other they don't allow themselves to step back and see what the bigger picture is.
I think you're absolutely right. But the trouble is that the resource they put into doing that in the medium to long term is far greater than sitting with the people who can help them. I think that part of this is an ego challenge, because people feel like they've got to solve the problem, as opposed to who can help me understand what the problem is. And actually, I think the Japanese would often say that in exploring what truly is the problem, actually solves it, so that you don't have to put some sort of project in to solve something.
And just to add to that, Thom, I think back to the BT board member in 1991, who was ahead of his time, because he wrote a book on chaos theory, and said to the end, as an example, out of chaos comes organization. So embrace chaos.
Yes. And I'm trying to, I think Dana Zohar wrote a book about that as well. So there have been some forward-looking thinkers on this, but I think they're definitely on the right track. So fostering resilience. Traditional leadership creates brittleness. Systems that work well in stable conditions but shatter under pressure. We optimize for efficiency at the expense of resilience. During COVID, companies with the leanest operations often suffered the most. They had no buffer, no redundancy, no adaptive capacity. Efficiency without resilience is a recipe for catastrophic failure. When everything is optimized for predictable conditions, you're completely unprepared for the unpredictable ones. Resilient organizations build adaptive capacity. In other words, the ability to not just survive change, but to thrive through it. Deep-rooted trees bend in storms while rigid structures snap. Interface, the carpet manufacturer, built resilience by integrating environmental thinking into every aspect of their business. When market conditions changed, their diverse capabilities allowed them to adapt quickly while competitors struggled. Resilience comes from diversity of skills, distributed decision-making, and cultures that see change as opportunity rather than threat. Fourth, encourage emergence. Most innovation programs fail because they try to manufacture creativity through process. You can't schedule breakthrough insights for Tuesday at 3 p.m. We try to engineer our way out of every challenge with predetermined solutions. When problems arise, we immediately jump to, what's the process? Where's the framework? What did other companies do? And this engineering mindset treats symptoms rather than root causes. We create elaborate project management systems to force innovation, implement best practices from other contexts that don't necessarily fit ours, and design solutions before we truly understand the problem. In nature, the most spectacular displays emerge without central planning. A meadow doesn't have an innovative strategy. It creates conditions where diverse life can flourish. Natural systems solve problems through emergence, solutions that arise from the system itself rather than being imposed from outside, like how an ant colony builds complex structures without blueprints, or how your immune system develops new responses to threats it's never seen before. 3M's famous 15% time policy led to breakthroughs like Post-it notes. Not because they planned it, but because they created space for emergence. Their scientists weren't trying to invent Post-it notes. They were exploring freely and stumbled upon something revolutionary. And of course, it was a freedom that the organization gave them to just explore without structure and without objectives. Emergence requires patience, curiosity, and the wisdom to recognize breakthrough moments when they appear. Regenerate. Industrial leadership treats people like renewable resources. Burn them out, replace them, repeat. This extractive mindset creates a kind of organizational exhaustion. Burnout rates have tripled in the last decade. Companies are literally consuming their human capital. The always-on culture isn't just unhealthy, it's economically destructive. Burned-out employees are 60% more likely to make errors and 23% more likely to visit A&E, the emergency room. Extraction-based leadership creates diminishing returns. Each cycle produces less value while requiring more input. I've just pressed the wrong button, so I go back to it. There we go. Nature operates on cycles of growth and renewal. No ecosystem depletes itself. Everything that dies becomes food for new life. Regenerative leadership works the same way. Patagonia gives employees time off for environmental activism. This isn't charity, it's investment. Their people return energized, inspired, and more committed. Their people turnover is a fraction of industry average, while their engagement scores are off the charts. Regenerative leadership asks, how does this decision nurture our people's capacity to contribute? It's the difference between mining talent and growing it. Learn from the wild. Business schools teach competition as a zero-sum game. Someone wins, someone loses. But this oversimplifies how nature actually works. And of course, it's not just business schools. I mean, that's sort of very much, certainly my experience of working in banking in the city, for instance. Pure competition leads to competitive exclusion. One species dominates until it destroys its own environment. Companies that adopt pure competitive strategies often succeed short-term, but they struggle long-term. And we're seeing that being lived out, particularly in the US at the moment. The 2008 financial crisis showed what happens when organizations optimize for individual gain at the expense of systemic health. Nature's most successful ecosystems balance competition with cooperation. Mycorrhizal networks allow trees to share nutrients and information, even with different species. Competitors collaborate when it serves the whole system. The aviation industry learned this lesson. Former competitors now share safety data because they realize that aviation disasters hurt everyone. Their cooperative competition has made flying really incredibly safe while preserving healthy competition on service and efficiency. Wild wisdom teaches us that the strongest systems aren't built on dominance, but on intelligent interdependence. Create space for exploration. We've created cultures obsessed with performance and allergic to learning. Every minute must be productive. Every activity must have a clear ROI. Every experiment must guarantee success. So many of us are proverbial hamsters on a wheel. We've created cultures where every minute must be productive. Every activity must have clear ROI. But this performance obsession actually makes us less intelligent, less creative, less adaptable, and a great deal more stressed. We've eliminated what nature considers essential for learning: play and exploration. In the wild, young animals spend enormous amounts of time in activities that don't produce immediate survival value. Cubs, wrestling, dolphins, surfing waves, ravens, sliding down snowy slopes for fun. Nature teaches us that play isn't frivolous. It's how complex beings develop crucial capacities. Young ravens playing with sticks aren't wasting time. They're developing the cognitive flexibility that makes them one of the most adaptable species on Earth. Dolphin calves spend years in seemingly unproductive play that actually develops the neural pathways for complex problem solving. Amazon's failure parties and Google's 20% time mirror this natural learning pattern, creating safe space for exploration that develops breakthrough capabilities. The most innovative organizations understand what wildlife biologists know. Exploration time isn't a luxury, it's an investment in adaptive intelligence.
Tom, just a thought that's been promoted or shown by the slide. But this, sorry, am I echoing?
Well, you're just a wee bit broken, but keep going.
Just shift audio to microphone. Works better. I won't go if it's too difficult to hear me.
No, go on. I mean, it's difficult, but not impossible.
Okay. Well, what reminded? I could put it in the chat. I got reminded of all the timesheets I used to have to keep as a fee earner in the accountancy profession. I had to justify every 15 minutes of my existence, and we've gone so far that way now that there is no space for exploration because we're obviously justifying our existence, and the short-termism that has developed. It's been around for 30, 40 years, and it's just got worse and worse. So, I think most people long for space for exploration. Most organisations are terrified of it.
Yes, and yeah, you're right. And of course, a lot of that is around control. And I remember when I worked in a big bank, 2015 to 16, and they were letting go of a lot of their space in the city, which meant that people had to work from home part of the time. And the managers were up in arms, a lot of them, because they said, well, how can I manage? These people are going to be just taking the piss. They're going to be going to the dentist and taking the dog for a walk and going to their children's school. They're not going to be working. The level of trust was so low. And yet, we've seen that if you give people the space to work within wider parameters where they feel they've got a degree of control, you can actually get much more out of them. So well, we have to go that way. So thank you. So the eighth piece, lead with purpose. Fear-based leadership might generate short-term compliance, but it kills long-term performance. When people operate from fear, their creativity shuts down, their collaboration suffers, and their engagement plummets. Research shows that fear-based cultures reduce cognitive function by up to 30%. People in psychological threat mode can't access their high-order thinking skills. You're literally making your team less intelligent. Fear-driven organizations might hit quarterly targets, but they struggle to innovate, adapt, or retain talent. In nature, no ecosystem needs micromanagement to flourish. Each element serves its purpose within the whole. Bees pollinate while gathering nectar. Mycorrhizal fungi share nutrients while receiving sugars from trees. Predators maintain balance while hunting for survival. This isn't chaos. It's purposeful self-organization. Every species has an intrinsic role that serves both individual needs and ecosystem health. There's no fear-based coercion, yet incredible coordination emerges. Coral reefs demonstrate this perfectly. Thousands of species create the world's most biodiverse ecosystems through purposeful interdependence. Each organism follows its nature while contributing to something magnificent that no single species could create alone. Purpose-driven leadership works this way. When people understand their meaningful contribution to something larger, they self-organize around that purpose, just like healthy ecosystems. Purpose isn't a nice-to-have, it's a competitive advantage. When people know why their work matters, they bring their full creativity and commitment to the challenge. So these 8 shifts create a multiplier effect. When you let go of control, you enable emergence. When you embrace complexity, you build resilience. When you lead with purpose, you don't need fear. Organizations that make these shifts report something like 45% increase in innovation rates, 60% improvement in employee engagement, 30% reduction in turnover, people turnover, 25% increase in customer satisfaction, and most importantly, they have leaders who love leading again. So here's what I know after 30 years of leadership development. Information alone doesn't create transformation. You need a guide who's walked this path before. These concepts are simple to understand but challenging to implement. Most leaders know what they should do differently. The challenge is how to actually make it happen in your specific context. So, if you're ready to begin to move from mechanistic leadership to living systems thinking, I'd like to offer you a complimentary 30-minute strategy session where we'll assess where your current leadership approach is where it might be working against you. You never know. You can identify the one or two shifts that could have the biggest impact in your situation. Create a practical roadmap for implementing these changes without disrupting what's already working. And explore how I, as a consultant, coach, or speaker, might support your transformation. So this is not about a sales call. It's a genuine exploration of how these principles might apply to your unique challenges. Whether we work together or not, you'll leave with clarity and practical next steps. The world is changing faster than ever. The leadership approaches that got you here are very unlikely to get you where you need to go. The question isn't whether you need to evolve, it's whether you'll lead that evolution or be forced to respond to it. So, I invite you to book a session. To book your complimentary strategy session, simply click the link using your camera or email me directly. I only take on a limited number of new clients each quarter, so I encourage you to reach out very soon. So, thank you. Do look me up on LinkedIn. Subscribe to the Rewilding the Corporate Mind newsletter. There's just a new newsletter that came out today. And rewild your leadership. Does anyone have any questions or reflections?